Yeah. Yes, I promised that I would send the notes, but I did not. The reason was I had some problem with the email. Still have. So I have now somehow passed on that file from some other account to Prasad, who will forward it to all of you. It's very complex stuff, these things. Sometimes very trivial thing will be done. Just like a mathematician. Simple thing will make a lot of fuss. Okay, last time we looked at Zorn's lemma. And what did Zorn's lemma say? That if in a non-empty partially ordered set, every chain has an upper bound, then the partially ordered set has a maximal element. Okay, so this is the other important lemma which guarantees the existence of a maximal element in a poset under some conditions. The condition that's required is that every chain has an upper bound. We have proved this lemma, but I just stated it. We saw one application of this last time as the existence of a Hammond basis for a vector space. This was also an application, we got the same result through Tukey's lemma also. We also got another lemma from Tukey's, another result from Tukey's lemma, that any two cardinal numbers are comparable. The law of trichotomy holds for cardinal numbers. The same thing can be proved using Zorn's lemma also. But I will not prove it, I will leave it as an exercise. Application 2. Exercise. Any two for any two cardinal numbers A and B, either A is less than or equal to B or B is less than. This we have proved using Tukey, but again you can use it to Zorn's lemma also. Essentially it runs along the same lines, but I will use it. Now what I want to do is, I want to look at another application of Tukey's lemma. It's a very much deeper and profound application of Tukey's lemma, Zorn's lemma. And so this eventually will be known, what is known as the well-ordering theorem. That is my next topic. But it will take some time. I will not rush to the result. We will go step by step, make several observations, and finally make our conclusion at the well-ordering theorems. Now if you recall, the real numbers with the usual less than or equal to ordering is a totally ordered set. Any two real numbers can be compared, either A is less than or equal to B or B is less than or equal to A. However, this ordering of less than or equal to is not a well ordering of the real numbers. You can have non-empty subsets of the real numbers which do not have a first element. However, less than or equal to is not a well ordering on what? This we have seen before. So this raises the question, is there any other ordering on R which will make it a well ordering? So we asked a question, is, about 2 or 3 classes back, is there an ordering? That means, is there a partial order on R which is a well ordered? And in fact, we ask a more general question, more general, why are given any set X, can we find a partial order on X which is a well ordering? Now we will show the answer is yes. Every set there must be some order with respect to which it is well ordered. So this is an instance of a theorem, the well-known existential types of theorems. But we don't know what it is, but we still will establish that there must be one. Okay. So here is a straw for philosophers. You can prove the existence of God, but you need not have to concrete physically produce him. Okay. So what it says is that you can prove the existence of a few things without having to concretely physically produce him, constructively produce him. Logically you can argue and say there must be one. Don't ask me who it is, but I can tell you certainly there must be one. So that's the sort of existential proof. These are non-constructive existential proofs. Okay, so that's our aim. Our aim is, hopefully I will finish it in this class. Our aim is to show that the answer to this question is yes. Using essentially using source. The fact that the answer to this question is yes is what is known as the well ordering theorem. That for every set X there is a well order. That is known as the well ordering theorem. We will write that in the end. How do we do that? Okay, some preliminary ideas. Normally I don't prove all these things in an analysis course. I thought that it's a very relaxed evening group. Still there are some people in the class. Before they run away, I do some non-trivial things. So, or maybe I do some non-trivial things so that some will run away. Either way. So let's look at some preliminary ideas for that. Now, because the proof, right, as a mathematician or terse way, it is 4 lines. Okay? But then nothing, if you read it for the first time, you don't understand what's going on. So let's look at this in a very leisurely manner. So I'll make lots of comments, couple of observations, with some examples and all. We eventually get that. Okay. Now let us start with, see, because we want to look at a big arbitrary set X. But then that's a very dangerous thing to do. Let us look at something with which we are all familiar with. So the set with which we are familiar with is the integer. So start with the set Z. The set of all integers. So let's make a lot of things with this and then understand to make a formal statement about general set. Now supposing, so let's look at example 1. Let's call it example 1. Look at the set of even integers, even positive integers. Okay, let's read things which are even more comfortable to us are the positive integers. Let us take all the positive even integers, which is say, well, Should I want positive or whichever way you want? You want positive or non-negative? Positive means 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. If you want to have non-negative even integers, take 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. It doesn't matter to us which one you want. There are few things we observe. Okay. E is literally contained in Z. And if you look at this set with the usual less than or equal to order, it's a partially ordered set. It's a totally ordered set. It is a well ordered set because every set of even integers will have a minimal element. Okay, first element. Okay, therefore this is a well ordered set. So what have it? We have a big set and we have formed a well ordered set. The base set for this well ordered set is a subset of that universe. So we had a universe here Z. We have taken a base set to be in this and formed a well ordered set out of it. So we have a well ordered set whose elements are coming from a universe Z. Well, there may be many other such well ordered sets whose base set come from the same universe. Let us look at another example. Let us look at the set of all natural numbers. Then this is also contained in Z and this is also a well ordered set. So we have two well ordered sets whose base sets are coming from the same universe, namely Z. Not only that, here we find one of the base sets is contained in the other base set, and when I restrict the order of this to this set, it is the same as this order. So okay, therefore we can think of and the restriction of n order to E is the E order. Okay, I suppose you understand what I mean here. If I restrict that ordering, what is meant by ordering? Is a relation. Relation means subset of n cross n. So this less than or equal to gives a subset of n cross n. In that subset, pick up all those which are subsets of E cross E, and that will give the same as this relation. That's what I mean. Okay, the restriction of this set. So what is happening here is the following. First of all, I had certain elements which are the E. They were in some order. Let's take that's the well order. Now I threw some more elements into it without disturbing their relative location. So I have thrown in some more elements now, maybe somewhere in between, but without disturbing the relative locations of the original points. Okay. So in a sense I have enlarged the original well ordered set into a bigger well ordered set without disturbing the earlier order. So this is what we are doing is, therefore we can write as n is a bigger well ordered set than and the ordering in n does not disturb the ordering in what we started with. Now I will tell you what, again I will give one more example, then you will see what is going on. Because it looks like after all n also had same order less than or equal to. Now I am going to look at another example, which is also going to do the same thing, but in a little different way. Here what happens is the E fellows are all sitting there, I start throwing some fellows. These fellows can go and sit randomly anywhere. Okay, I can take any integer, it may be 47, then it has to go and stand there. But now I am going to do it in a different way. So let us look at the same thing again. The starting point is again the even number in the well ordered set with base set E, the subset of C. Again, take n. But put a different order on this now. I am going to put a different order than this less than or equal to. Define a partial order on n as follows. I want to say when is A related to B. Okay, so we say for A, B in n, we say A is, I will denote this relation now by. Now if you want to be very specific, you can call it the E relation, this is the N relation. A is related to B if 1. I look at A and B. Okay. What can there be? They can only be integer, positive integers. A and B are coming from N. So they are natural numbers. So they are positive integers. A positive integer can be either even or odd. The possibilities are A and B have the same parity. Both are even or both are odd. So we say if A less than or equal to B and AB are both even and are both odd. AB are both even or both odd. If they have the same parity, the relationship is the usual less than or equal to. If they have different parity or A less than or equal to B or no less than or equal or what is the other case left? They have different parity. When they have different parity, one of them is even, the other one is odd. Whenever there is even and odd, I will call always the even fellow related to the odd fellow. That is A even and you understand this relation? I just throw two integers at you. If you look at those two integers, if both are odd, then I put the smaller one first and then the bigger one. If both are even, I put the smaller one first and the bigger one later. If one of them is even and one of them is odd, I put the even one first and the odd one later. How does it arrange the integers now? If you look at this set now, in fact it's a partially ordered set, it's a totally ordered set, it's a well ordered set. Why is it a well ordered set? If you take a non-empty set, we must say it as a first element. Take any non-empty subset of n. It's enough if I show this, because every well ordered set is totally ordered, it's also partially ordered. Well, to check that this is a partial order, you have to check that it's a partial order, but that's very easy. Why is it? Okay, let me do that also. I mean, gone through all this. Let me do this. Why is it a partial order? It will be a partial order if it is first of all reflexive. That is, it must be comparable to itself. But if you take A and A, they have the same parity. So they are comparable by rule 1. Okay. So A less than equal to A by rule 1. Because A and A have the same parity. Both are odd, both are. Now, secondly, if what can we say? They certainly cannot be of different parity. Right? Because if they are different parity, the even one must come before the odd one. It cannot happen both ways. So they must certainly be of same parity. If they are of same parity, both are odd. If both are odd, this means A less than or equal to B. This means B less than or equal to A. Therefore A equal to B. Antisymmetry. If both are even, same story again. Okay? So this implies A equal to B. Why? I will write it and you complete it. Because of the parity arguments. Okay? And now, exercise transitive. Argue carefully and then show that case. So therefore, it's a partial order. It is reflexive, it is antisymmetric, and it is transitive. Now, why is it a toss? So therefore, poset. Why is it a toe set? You give me two fellows, I must say they are comparable. Well, the rule says any two fellows are comparable, either they are the same parity or different parity. If they are same parity, apply this rule, they are comparable. If they are different parity, apply this rule, they are comparable by definition. By definition, any two are comparable. Then, why is it a well-ordered set? Take any non-empty set. It may contain only even integers, in which case there will be a smallest even integer. It may contain only odd integers, in which case the smallest odd integer is the first element. The problem comes when both are there. When both are there, the odd fellows are always bigger, throw them out. Among the even fellows, pick the smallest fellow, he is the first element. So that's obviously so that's what is meant by saying that obviously this is our set. Obviously. Since every non-empty set, okay, let me write non-empty set has the first element. What is that first element? It is equal to the smallest even integer. Okay, every non-empty set that name non-empty set. Smallest even integer in A if there exists an even integer in A. If at all, whenever there exists an even integer in A, takes the smallest among them. If there is no even integer, all are odd integers, take the smallest odd integer in A if A contains only odd integers. In fact, if I now tell you how the sets are organized, you will see it immediately. The elements are organized like this. All the even elements must come before all the odd elements. Isn't it? Because every even element is smaller than every odd integer. So among the even integers they are arranged as increasing order. So 2, then 4, then 6, then 8, it will go on like this. When the entire listing of the odd integers is even integers over, the odd integers will start in that order. So this is a very peculiar ordering of the natural number. Put all the even parity fellows on one side in the increasing order, then bring all the odd integers in that order. Now we will see if we take any partially ordered, what does this say is, if you take something from here and something from here, take the smallest fellow here as a minimum element. If you take only from here, take the smallest fellow. That's very obvious now, the first element which is the first. Okay? Is the ordering clear? So now let us recall what we are doing. We had the z at the background. We first had the even integers with the usual order. Then we introduced the n with another order. So therefore n is a bigger row set than this E, and again this new order does not disturb the order of the original fellows, because the even numbers are still arranged only in this order, okay, and restricted to E is okay. So these fellows have brought in some new fellows without disturbing the old fellow's position. But now, unlike in the previous case, they have not at all disturbed the old fellows. Nobody goes in between them. Whereas previously, somebody could go in between them. All the new fellows come after all the old fellows. So every E element appears or precedes every E. So this, in both the examples, what we have done is, we have taken a smaller row set and made it a bigger row set without disturbing the positioning, relative positioning of the original fellows. But in the second case, we are not only not disturbed, we are simply not disturbed that universe at all. We have gone and made a concatenation. Basically, we have done a concatenation, which is simply appended. We made the old fellow as a prefix to the bigger universe. So for the bigger universe, it is always the old fellows will come. So E prefixed with something became the, or E suffixed with something became the new fellow. So that is the difference between this and that. Not only that, you observe one more thing. After these two examples, I will pause for a moment and you ask me any questions you have. Not only that comes, there is, if you look at, there is a fellow in the new fellow, there is a unique new fellow, such that all the old fellows come before it. There exists an element 1 in n minus E such that E in the new ordering, all the old fellows come appear before you. And the first new fellow that enters is, there is a first new fellow who enters, namely is that clear? This example? There is a lot of difference between this and the first example. First example also blows up a smaller one into a bigger one. Second example also blows up a smaller one into a bigger one. The first example also does not disturb the old order. Second example also does not disturb the old order. The difference is in the fact that all the new fellows come totally not disturbing the old fellows at all. They leave them as it is and then start afterwards. And there is a first start. I mean, there is an element who comes first after all the old elements. So we therefore call this the new well-ordered set as a continuation of the old well-ordered set. If this happens, we say that the new well-ordered set is a continuation of the old. That is the terminology which I want to introduce. continuation of a well-ordered set W2 less than or equal to 2 is a continuation of the well-ordered set W1 less than or equal to 1 if the one is a bigger set, orders are maintained, one is a restriction of the other, and all the new fellows come after the old fellows, and there is a particular fellow who comes first after all the old fellows. In fact, this I want to write this as another way, that is, the old set, the smaller set is nothing but all the elements in N such that strictly less than 1. All the elements which are smaller than 1. In the old set, if the elements of the old set are the elements of the new set which are such that in the new order they all come before 1. Is that clear? You should write it as x less than, or you should write it as x less than or equal to n x naught. No questions? Is that clear what's happening? Yes. The last line. This side. This line. This means this. All the even numbers come before all the odd numbers. The odd numbers are the new fellows. All the new fellows come after all the old fellows. That's all. Every even element precedes every odd element. Oh, this one. Okay. Every n minus. Okay, thanks. Every n minus here. Now, when you are dealing with formal languages, you always say concatenation of a word by something else, but you allow epsilon concatenation, right? That is, a word is thought of as a concatenation of itself. So that way we must think that even if I don't add anything here, I must think of that as a concatenation of itself. So the continuation definition takes care of all this, plus the fact that every fellow must be thought of as his own concatenation. So generalize this to get the following definition. So to get to a definition, right, take a generalize this to get the following definition. Let X be any set. I will stick to this format. Let X be any set. W1, W2, well-ordered sets such that W1, W2 are subsets of X. The base sets are all from the universe X. Now the X plays the role of Z. Model for W1, maybe you can take E. Model for W2, you can take as the N. So I suppose I have two well-ordered sets whose base sets are from X. Then we say W2, the same, unfortunately the same notation is used. Well, it's not unfortunate because once you get used to it, it's the same, okay? And read this and call W2 as a continuation of W1. So this is now in this context, this relationship is the continuation relationship, okay? That subset of some symbol should be read as continuation relation. No same symbol is used. Continuation of this if what? 1 W1 is equal to W2 and the two orders are the same. In other words, both are the same bus sets. If both are the same well-ordered sets, I say one is a continuation. Now the continuation is by an empty string. An empty string has been added to concatenation. Or if that is W1 is not equal to W2, then I want W2 to be bigger. W1 contained but not equal to W2, and in that case I have a relation here. That relation also makes sense for W1, but W1 had its original relation. What is the connection between the old relation and the new relation for W1 elements? I can talk for W1 elements, the old less than or equal to 1 relation, but since they are part of W2, I can also talk about the less than or equal to 2 relation. Now what is the connection between these two relations? I don't want to disturb the old relation. So what it means is, and for AB in W1, A less than or equal to 1 B, if and only if A less than, the old relation and the new relation must collapse into the same thing when you have with elements of W1. In the common portion, it is the same. So it's like the same idea as the extension of a function. Okay. In the common portion, they all do. And this part, that is this part. Everybody appears before him, and this part is what I want to. There exists an A, and there exists an A in W2 minus W1 such that W1 is equal to the set of all x in W2. X is A plays the role of 1. Okay? If you take W1 to be E and W2 to be this N, this A is the role played by the. Then we say it's a continuation of that. Is that definition clear?
Alpha 2 or
Alpha 2
x?
Alpha 2.
Alpha 2.
Yes. You are right, absolutely right. Is that definition clear? Any question?
So, there exists an element in W2
Yes.
which is less than everybody in W2.
Can it happen? Then they are not, it is only a partial order. It's only if this happens, I will say it's a continuation. There may be two OSS which are not comparable. It is only a partial order. It is not going to be a total order. So that's what the statement I am going to make. I am not claiming that any two fellows are comparable. So what am I going to claim now is, what we say is, if we have two well-ordered sets whose base sets are coming from Z, I can compare them only if this happens. If this does not happen, I can't compare. So this comparison, if it satisfies reflexivity, antisymmetry and transitivity, is only a partial order. It is not saying that any two sets with the base comparable base sets in Z are comparable. Okay. So that's the statement I am going to look at. So let us look at all well-ordered sets whose base sets are subsets of X. We will call this Wx. All well-ordered sets whose base sets are subsets of X. For example, if you take Z, this is an element of Wz, because this is a well-ordered set with subset whose base set is in this. This is a well-ordered, this is an element of Wz, because this is a well-ordered set whose base set is in this. That new relation I wrote that is also an element of WZ because it's base set, and these two may not be comparable. Okay, so in fact with the same base set I may have several well ordered sets. Like that example, with the same base set n, I can have several well ordered sets. I am simply collecting them all and putting in some basket. I know that some of them are comparable by this continuation rule. If two fellows I randomly pick and see whether one is a continuation of the other. If so, I write that. How do I check whether they are continuation? I see whether they are the same. If not, I look whether that condition is satisfied. Then I say, okay, this fellow, the continued fellow comes later and the original fellow. If they are not anything like that, I don't compare them. These two fellows are different fellows, they cannot be compared.
Previous relation, if we say that one is less than all even numbers,
Yes.
and then rest of the odd numbers are greater than all those even numbers.
Here?
One comes first.
Yes.
Then still this will
Yeah,
hold.
that is another order. Some prime. I have defined this order.
No.
I can put 3, I can put 15, I can put
That's not
27.
become a concatenation.
Yeah. That's still a concatenation. If you remove this one, this part is a concatenation. But then, if you put this way, then it will not be a continuation of this. A continuation means everybody must come afterwards. We cannot compare this with the original. Is that clear? So, comparison is possible only if one set is smaller than the other set and the bigger set elements all come after the smaller set elements. And there is one new element which comes as the first new element. Okay. That is this, like this one. Then only we set it. Is that clear? Is the definition clear? Because once these things are clear, the proof of the theorem is trivial more or less. It's the same thing. If you peel off that proof, there are only some small definitions and terminology which bog you down. Once we have a picture of this thing, the rest of it is clear. The rest of it there is nothing like this. Okay. So now, claim 1. Wx with this relation is a partially ordered set. This has to be verified. What is to be verified? That this relation is reflexive. That means every well-ordered set whose base set is in W is related to itself. And that's what this first statement is. Okay. Every well-ordered set whose base set is in W is related to itself. And what will happen if one well-ordered set is a continuation of the other and the other fellow is a continuation of this fellow? They got to be the same. So now it's all common sense arguments. And if one is a continuation of the other, you add one more appendix to it, so that this fellow is certainly already has an appendix, more appendix has been added. So the transitivity is now these things are all obvious. So therefore, this is a partially ordered set. So that's what is meant by saying clearly. It's no longer a claim. No, the claim is clearly. That it is a partially ordered set is a trivial fact. That it is clear is what is the claim. Okay, so the next thing is, now the moment you have the right setup to start thinking about Zorn's lemma. What does Zorn's lemma say? You must start with a partially ordered set and then look whether every chain in it has an upper bound. Now claim 2. In every chain has an upper bound. Cannot prove. This is how the argument will go. See, now we know how to proceed. Once you have partially ordered set, you think of applying Zorn's lemma. The first thing you have to verify is whether every chain has an upper bound. Suppose we have this. I have not proved it. Suppose we have this. Then what does Zorn's lemma say? Immediately we say by Zorn's lemma. Zorn's lemma is like by Jove, it is true. So it's by Zorn. By Zorn's lemma, Wx has a maximal element Now let's see what it means. What are elements of Wx? They are all well ordered sets with base set in W. So this element, that is, there is a well ordered set W naught with the base set contained in X. Base set must be a subset of X. Not only that, that is only to say that that is an element. It's a maximal element. Every other is that what it says? Every other element here is smaller than this? No.
Nobody's bigger.
Nobody is bigger than it. And if there is an extension or continuation of, what should I call it? W1 is belonging to Wx. So if there is an extension of this or a continuation of this, then he must be the same. Implies. What is meant by maximal element? Somebody exceeds him, he must be the same. The only fellow who can exceed him is himself. So W1 must be equal to W. There is a maximal well-ordered set. That means you have a well-ordered set, you cannot be bloated any further. No more appendix can be added to it. It cannot be any more concatenated with something. Okay, that's what it really means. I can't add anything, even a one element to the right of it, then it will fail to be. Claim 3. W naught is equal to X. That is well ordered. What does it mean? X, that is, therefore, X is a well ordered set. Isn't it? Because all are well ordered set. That means I have got an ordering on X which is a well ordering. I started with an arbitrary set and I got. So therefore theorem. Every set X can be well ordered. That is what is known as the well ordering. The rest of the theorem will be to verify these claims. Steps up. These three claims that we have to verify. If we verify these three claims, then we have got the well ordering theorem that every set can be well ordered. So how did we do? We said, okay, I don't know whether X can be well ordered. Something inside can be well ordered. Bloat it. Bloat it as far as possible. Bloat it. That maximum bloating is possible by Zorn's lemma. When you are maximally bloated, you would have hit X is our final claim, and therefore you would have done it on X. That's the essence of the proof of the well ordering theorem using Zorn's lemma. Is that clear? Now you see, going through these proofs again and again carefully, you get a clearer understanding of all the definitions. Partially ordered, totally ordered, well ordered, continuation, extension, relation, everything will be precisely used in each one of these ideas. Okay. The idea of the maximal element, all this will come into mind. So, the best thing is to go backwards. First, prove claim 3. Then prove claim 2. Claim 1 I already said clearly, so there is nothing else. Okay, so it's only basically therefore claim 2 and claim 3. So let's look at claim 2. So we'll go backwards and group these two. Because I want to go through this because again it brings in the novel, the correct understanding of maximality, minimality, maximality, and what, how do you use that concept to establish these things, etc. Now what do you want to prove? You want to prove that W naught equal to X. What was W naught? That maximal element we got in by using Zern's lemma. Suppose W naught is not equal to X, we will say we can bloat W naught further, which will violate the maximality of W naught. Okay. So that's a proof of C. Now things become fairly easy. Proof of claim 3. Suppose W naught is not equal to X. We know that W naught is a subset of X, therefore there exists an element X in X such that X does not belong to W naught. Right? Then I want to bloat it. So what is the bloating I do? I take W1 to be W naught union, that one element is added. But I have to define the order. How do I define the order? I should not disturb the order for W naught fellow. So xy belongs to W naught, then x is if and only f. So I did not disturb the old order. Now I have to look at new orders. Where should I place x? In the end. So therefore I must add all the relations. So look at this. Okay, and a less than or equal to x for every a in. Now if you want to look at it set theoretically, this is a relation. That means it's a set. What set? Subset. Subset of what? W naught cross W naught. So this is a subset of W naught cross. Now I am trying to construct a subset of W1 cross W1 cross. How do I construct it? I want to keep all the old fellows. So it is this union. Now I am going to add new fellows. Who are all the new fellows? All the A's in the old fellows are related to the new fellows. That's it. So that puts X on the right extreme. And it satisfies the condition, everybody comes before one first fellow. This definition is also satisfied. Okay, therefore, I'll just write, therefore, W1 is a continuation of W naught contradicting maximality because he said this is the maximal element, it cannot be concatenated anymore, but we have put an X there.
But it changes symbol X again. So,
Where?
the rectangle.
Here is it. Yeah, is that okay now? Is that definition clear? So what happens is, I have this W naught, I just add one element X, and there were some elements, take this fellow, it is related to him, he goes in this relation also. A certain new ordered pairs are added. Which are all the added pairs? With every one of them append this X. A1x, A2x, A3x, etc. And that appending is this. And that is the appendix which makes the continuation part. And the continuation such that X comes as the first new fellow after all the old fellows. Is that clear? And therefore, the maximality is violated, and that we got from assuming that W not equal to X. Therefore, W not equal to X, and we are done. This part is over. is left? Essentially this. Every chain must have an upper bound. Is that clear? One of the most abstract theorems for us. We have a theme where, like, I mean, this you will find that somewhere in some corner, most of the analysis books will not carry the proof. They will say all these Jones-Lemon, this well-ordered theorem, they are equal and the proof is beyond the scope of the book. That's very standard. It means I don't want to mess up my hand and prove it beyond the scope of the book. I do not want to insult you by saying that the proof is beyond the scope of this class. This proof is well within the scope of this class, and therefore I want to do this. Okay, now that we have proved 3, I can move this and look at claim 2. See, this is a fine example of how you nicely, correctly use the definitions. That's all, nothing more. Claim 2. What do we want to prove? Every chain has an upper bound. So to prove that, every chain in Wx has an upper bound. It is like one of the Pancharatna Kirtanas, this proof of this theorem. I mean, it has ingredients of all abstract thinking, logical arguments, and putting the right things in the right place, etc. But the combination of all these, showing the equivalence is the ultimate. Okay, of all these theorems. Okay, how do we show this? Okay, let's start with any chain and show it as an upper. So let C be any chain. So it will have certain elements, so let's call it as. Now what are the elements? What are the elements of this? They are all well-ordered sets. So there will be some well-ordered sets, notations are terrible, where alpha will run through some index set. That index set may be finite, in which case no problem. That index set may be countably infinite. That index set may be uncountably infinite. I don't know how many elements are there in the chain, but I will index them by accordingly. If there is uncountably infinite, I can always find an indexing set for that. So let C be this chain. Now, we want to somehow or other cook up an upper bound. Right? We want to cook up an upper bound. So this is the trick which will be used in almost all the proofs where we use Ernst lemma. Cooking up the upper bound will be the same idea repeatedly used. Okay. How do you cook up this upper bound? Now, how should this upper bound look like? The upper bound must also be an element of this partially ordered set Wx, and therefore the upper bound must also be a well ordered set. So the upper bound, an upper bound must be a well ordered set, say W tilde W naught belonging to this partial ordered set. Right? It should also be an element of that. Every element is a well ordered set, so it should also be a well ordered set. So in order to get a well ordered set, there are two components that I need to build up this well ordered set. One component is this base set, the other component is this partial order. So, such that W alpha is for every alpha. Is that correct? Because this should be the upper bound. Everybody else in that chain must be bounded by this one. This is what we want. So now we are going to shop for these two components. The first component we must look for is W naught. So what is the natural choice for W naught? If we say X, we are already begging the question because already I am going to well order the set X. I don't know whether I can well order the set X. That is the real question. I can't take X. So naturally, what is the minimal thing I can work with? These W alphas must be contained in W naught. All of them must be contained in W naught. So we need W alpha contained in W naught for all alpha because this is a bigger set of every one of them. It's a bigger row set. So we must find one set which contains all the W alphas. Which is that? Union. Okay. So try W naught equal to union W alpha alpha beta I. So that is a one possible component which may work. Because anything bigger is I don't know anything about them because I know information only about the W alpha. The chain means I have information only about the W alphas. Anything I shall build up must be through the known information from the W alpha. So this is one thing I can build which contains all of them. Then next, what is the natural choice for can you guess? Interpret everything in terms of set theoretically. Every less than or equal to alpha is a set. What set? Subset. Subset of what? W alpha cross W alpha. So each less than or equal to alpha is a relation. So it's a subset of W alpha cross W alpha. Put them all together as a union. Again, whenever you have sets, you want to form a biggest one possible containing all of them is the union. So choose, okay, try union of, this notation is terrible in the sense that you must interpret this as a set, subset of, interpret this as a subset of W alpha cross W alpha and this as a subset of W naught. Why will this be a subset of W naught cross W naught? Because every W alpha is in W naught. This is in W naught. So this is also an element in W naught cross W naught. So all of them will be in W naught cross W naught. So that will be a relation on W. Is that clear? So now simply repeat the last one. What is this? This is a relation on W alpha. A relation on W alpha is a subset of the Cartesian product of W alpha with itself. So this is a subset of W alpha cross W alpha. But W alpha is a subset of W naught. Therefore this is a subset of W naught cross W naught. Take all such subsets and take the union. That will be a subset of W naught cross W naught and hence a relation on W. That relation is what I am going to consider. Okay? Is it clear? Now claim 2A. The problem is finally you are peeling off the onion. Claim 2A is W naught is a well-ordered set and therefore belongs to, see what we did was we wanted an upper bound and that upper bound must be in Wx, but we did some jugglery here and constructed something. We better make sure that it is in Ws. Once we claim that, that becomes an, because we have got our set which is an upper bound and we are done. Every part, every chain we have got an upper bound which is in that. If so, then where was I? 2A.
2A.
Then W naught is an upper bound and you are done. Hence claim 2. So it's like a surgeon. Slowly you are getting to the tumor now. Finally what is left is to verify that this fellow is a... Now that's in a sense cakewalk, because it's only verifying the definition. You have to verify that this is a partial order on this, verify that it's a total order on that, verify that it's indeed a well order on that. And we are done. Okay? So therefore, it remains to prove 2A. Very clear? Let me see. Now, okay. First part, easy to see. That means I don't want to see. Easy to see that is a total order on so only thing to verify is that it is a well order. See, total order means first of all partial order, that any two elements are any element is comparable with itself. Let me just go a little bit. Any element in W naught must be comparable with itself. Okay. In the lambda naught, this knot relation. But any element in W naught must be one of the W alphas. If it is W alpha is a well ordered set. So any element is comparable in the alpha relation, and therefore it belongs to this, and therefore it belongs to this, and therefore any element is comparable in the knot relation. So what you do is take your problem here to one of the alphas, get the result there, and show that this alpha naught is the union of all those fellows, therefore it must be there. Is that clear? So similarly, where was that? What is left then? Total order, same argument. If you take any two fellows, is a problem. What will happen? Not a problem. If you look at it properly, there is no problem. There is no problem in this world. The problem is that you are not looking at it properly. If you look at every problem properly, it is not a problem. If you take any two elements A and B belong to W naught, and therefore A will belong to one W alpha and B will belong to W beta. But there is a chain. One of them must be contained in the other, and therefore both will belong to one particular W alpha. Once you put both of them in one thing, you are done. Use the anti-symmetry, etc. in that, and so the idea is to bring all of them into one known zone and use that part and push it back through this union. Is that clear? So therefore I will leave it since it got easy. That is what is meant by easy to check. Write all that half a page of explanation. So what is left then? Finally, it remains to show that is a well ordering on them. What does that mean? You want to show that every non-empty subset of W naught will have a first element. Is to show that every non-empty subset A of W naught has A belong to A, such that A less than X for every X. Every non-empty set as a first element. That is all that is left. So finally, we come down to that simple observation, and then the rest of it. So this is the real simple thing. So that's what, this is a very simple verification. There is nothing very special. So basically the proof is this. The rest of it is only putting things together. I remember So basically, therefore, theorem boiled down to constructing the right partially ordered set to which you can apply Zonslemmy. Okay, once we knew that, the rest of it was just routine work, only technical details to be checked at every step. Right, so what should you do? Now I have a problem. If I had one element, I brought it to some W alpha. If I had two elements, I brought them all to one W. If I had finite numbers, still I can bring all of them. Now if I have A could be infinite. So how do I bring them all to one W alpha? There is a problem. If I can push them all into one W alpha, then I am there because that's a non-empty subset of that. That was our set. Therefore, there will be a first element that will also satisfy that relation because the relation restrictions are the same. But now I am in trouble. When I am in trouble, what do? I get a question paper. I know the answers to some questions. I don't know the answers to some questions. First, I answer the questions which I know. So therefore, what do?
Finite character.
No finite character here yet. What do? Tell me. I somehow take one W alpha portion of A, right? And there everything I know, that I cure. First I will cure that. Now how do which W alpha portion of A I will choose? That is not clear, right? So first step is to get hold of some portion of A which lies in one particular W alpha, and that portion must be non-empty because if I want to apply the well-ordered nature of that W alpha, I must take a non-empty subset of that W alpha. So I must somehow or the other go on which part of this tumor a positive piece of that lies in one single W alpha. Now there must be at least one. Why? A is non-empty. What is A? This is not empty. But A is a subset of what? W naught. So it must be A intersection W naught. But W naught is the union of all the W alphas, which will be equal to this Democrat's law. A intersection union is equal to union of the intersections with the A's. Now all of them cannot be empty because if all of these are empty, then the union will be empty, then A will be empty. But we assume that A not empty. Since A is not empty, at least one of them must be non-empty. So there will be one alpha where there will be some piece of A that will lie. Okay? Therefore, there exists an alpha such that A intersection W alpha is not empty. Okay? By the time we come to the end of the proof, we forgot what we were trying to do. So, what is next? A, therefore, is a non, this A, call this A alpha as the W alpha portion of A. Okay? A alpha is a non-empty subset of W alpha. But W alpha is a well-ordered set, so A alpha must have a first element. Therefore, A and W alpha is a, therefore A alpha has a first element. Say A. What does that mean? A less than or equal to X in what relation? In the alpha relation, because now we have come to this piece. Okay, we remove that W alpha piece and we are looking from the W alpha glass. From the W alpha glass, A is less than or equal to X for every X in A is the first element of A alpha, looked at as a non-empty subset of the W alpha was. But A is also in A alpha, X is also in A alpha, and therefore Ax also belongs to not relation. Because the not relation does not disturb the alpha relations. So therefore, because W naught is a continuation of W alpha, it does not disturb this. So we are somewhere there. We say that A must have a first element with respect to this not relation. Okay, we want to show that every non-empty set, I should put here, A must have a first element with respect to that. So what we have done is, we have not shown that there is a first element in A, but there is a first element in some portion of A. Not all of A, we have been able to get a first element in a portion of A. The last step is to show that this is indeed a first element in all of A. So therefore, A is the first element of A alpha in the O set W naught. No, I shouldn't say in the O set. In the partially ordered set. Now I want to show that it's the first element of A. That is the last, so therefore the last piece is. Leave it as an exercise. Show that A is indeed the first element. A. And we are done. So far we have shown that every non-empty set has a first element, and this is what we want to show. Just think for a while, what will happen? When will that fail? This will fail, A will fail to be a first element in A, for A, if there exists a B in A, B not equal to A, such that B goes before A. Then in what relation? Again same argument. If B and A are related, there must be some earlier set from which they should have come. Now argue that B will also be less than or equal to alpha relation A, and A is less than or equal to alpha relation B. You put them all together, you will get this. So this is the starting point of it. Okay. So that's I was not sure whether I would be able to prove it, leave alone complete proof. I was not sure whether I would be able to prove this theorem, but I did it. It's a long time since I ever looked at this theorem. But I thought this is a theorem which involves ideas. How to use all these, and how does one do a proof? How does finally a proof boil down to observing one simple fact? So it's a simple fact, like percolates upwards, and give a very disguised result is called Bellard. As a main theorem. So we have a theorem, therefore, Zorn's lemma implies the well-ordering. By Zorn's lemma, we can prove that every set can be well-ordered. Therefore, the real numbers can be well-ordered. But what is that order? Nowhere we have said what that order is. Simply say that it has to be there. We don't know what it is, but it has to be. So, That's a very important theorem that every set can be well ordered. I mean, eventually you will see that these are all boiled down to saying that you are actually assuming it. Okay? You make a lot of noise. Finally, you say it's an axiom. Okay. But the axioms are like that. If you grant that, then these are all true. Or if you grant this, those are all true. This is, as it is, it doesn't look like a trivial affair at all. It does not look a trivial observation. But its equivalent version, it looks like a trivial statement. And unfortunately, even that trivial statement is non-provable. And that's what is called the axiom of choice. I keep on talking about the axiom of choice, and that will be the next topic. And next class, I'll finish all this. I'll talk about axiom of choice and look at the connection between the axiom of choice, Bell-ordering theorem, Zorn's lemma, and Tukey's lemma.